Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Monday, June the 10th, 2024. Today I want to talk about the Paris Olympics. Now, I don't really find the Olympics really very interesting. I remember the 1972 Olympics. That seemed to be the sort of the peak in terms of my own awareness of the Olympics and me paying attention to what was going on. And I don't know, I kind of take the view that the Olympics was very much a phenomena relating to the Cold War, when you had the Soviet Union and America with their geopolitical interests, and they'd come together, and always, Soviet Union would come top in the medal tables, and it would be a big struggle, and it was sort of global conflict brought down to the level of sport, and that's to my mind what the Olympics is all about. When you had the end of the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Olympics were kind of irrelevant. Probably the last proper Olympics was the Montreal Olympics in 1976. After that, you had the 1980 Moscow Olympics, which was boycotted by the West, and I think the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics was boycotted by the Soviet bloc. And so after that, I just don't see the point of the Olympics. But you see, I'm just reflecting, my view of the world. I've got the South Node conjunct Saturn in Aquarius in the 11th house, and I've got North Node in Leo in the 5th. Fifth house, I perhaps have a bit of a problem with the 5th house there. And of course, the 5th house is about sports and about competitive activity. So we could say that the Olympics is a 5th house activity. Now, I do want to talk about the Paris Olympics, consider what it might be like. I haven't gone into great detail. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. I'm also going to look at the 1972 Olympics. The reason I'm going to look at the 1972 Olympics is the 1972 Olympics in Munich was an example of a disastrous Olympics, in the sense that you had the Palestinians under the Black September attacked the Israeli team, and there was this massacre, and it was all a big disaster. So in terms of any comparison, you have to make the comparison with the Munich Olympics, because say, for example, you want to come up with the claim that the Paris Olympics is going to be a disaster. Well, what's your benchmark? Your benchmark has got to be the Munich Olympics. So I will be looking at the Munich Olympics, and I will be kind of comparing it with the Paris Olympics which is, I think it's July the 26th, and sort of looking at the opening ceremonies of the two. And, we will see that the Munich Olympics really was bad. The Paris Olympics is simply not at that level. And usually with these things, they pass off without much of a fuss. But as I said, intrinsically, I'm not particularly interested in the Olympics. I believe that the Olympics are fairly irrelevant. And the last proper Olympics was 1976, because that was when you had the United States, the Soviet Union competing, and it was all about superpower rivalry. And now, I don't think Russia's not even competing in Paris in 2024. So, what is the point of it all? Anyway, that's just my very subjective view. Before I look at the Olympics, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Monday, June the 10th, 2024. So here is the chart for today. Set it for midday, New York. Now, just a kind of a warning, there's not a great deal happening today. When we look at the moon, we see that the moon is at noon in New York was at around 10 degrees Leo, and it's not making any specific aspects. You can see that the moon is sort of separating very widely from a sextile to Jupiter, and it is applying sort of widely to a sextile of Mercury. So we've sort of got Moon in Leo making aspects to Mercury and Jupiter, but they're quite vague. They're not particularly precise. So, that is perhaps about Moon in Leo having maybe a strong sense of self and wanting to communicate, being able to communicate, and maybe also having a sense of what is the right thing to do, because the Moon in Leo is making a trine to the North Node in Aries and making a sextile to the South Node in Libra. So perhaps with those aspects, we do maybe have a bit of a choice, and we kind of know what we're supposed to be doing, but I don't think there is any major pressure here. So this reflects my view that it's probably not going to be an especially exciting day. Now, it is actually an exciting week. There is tons of stuff going on this week, but it really starts tomorrow on Tuesday. I suppose we're maybe starting to feel a little bit of it. You can see that there is, where's Mars? There's Mars, you see. There's Mars at 1 degree 6 Taurus. And Mars is applying to a square to Pluto. Now, that square to Mars and Pluto, between Mars and Pluto, is exact tomorrow. But we should be feeling it today. So Mars square Pluto is a feeling of our own power or lack of power. And many of us may feel that we need more power, and that in order to assert ourselves, we may have to do something quite dramatic, and something really over the top, or we may have to be very, very focused on one particular thing and just keep going. Oh, that's Mars in Taurus. Mars in Taurus really likes to focus on one thing and just keep moving in a particular direction, and not be distracted. And so that might be a good way to use Mars square Taurus. At the same time, we have to watch out for other people who have a strong sense of their own power, and it might be the kind of exercise of power that doesn't really care too much about human emotions upsetting people. It's just got to be done regardless. And so that's how Mars square Pluto can work. Turning to the heliocentric picture, there are a few things going on. So we can see that Mars is now conjunct Neptune. I think the Mars conjunct Neptune is actually exact tomorrow, but still that heliocentric conjunction between Mars and Neptune may encourage us to delve into places that we don't normally delve into. Now, that could be a good or a bad thing. I mean, Mars conjunct Neptune may be about putting one's energy into things of a spiritual nature, but it could also be about getting distracted and straying into areas that we really shouldn't be going into, where there are dangers. It may not be us, it may not be other people, it may be more other people. Remembering that the heliocentric picture is quite collective. It's about where the collective is going, how the collective is trying to assert itself. And with Mars conjunct Neptune, I suppose we have to think about water damage, flooding. We don't want to play games with water, and we don't want to take risks with water with Mars conjunct Neptune. Also, Venus is starting to apply to a square of Mars and Neptune. Not exact for a few, not exact for a few days, but we're perhaps starting to feel it. Maybe this is reflected in who we relate to, our choice of friends, and maybe our choice of friends isn't always going to be wise. And Jupiter is trine Pluto. It's a time for self-improvement. We should never be happy with what we've got or what we can do right now, because we could always do it better. And so don't be complacent. We mustn't rest on our laurels. Now I know that geocentric aspect between Jupiter and Pluto is already past exactitude, but now we've got the heliocentric Jupiter trine Pluto. And so, yeah, don't be satisfied with the way things are, because yes, I do think that things could be better. And finally, Chiron is trine the Earth. There's Chiron, heliocentric Chiron at 2001 Aries, and there's the Earth. So Chiron trine Earth, I think it's quite a gentle influence, but with that Chiron, Earth trine Chiron, there are things we can do in a gentle way to make things better, to help other people. It's not compulsory, but if we have the chance, we can make someone's life a bit better, and it won't take much of an effort. So if someone's got a problem and or they're worried about something, or as Chiron, they've got some kind of wound, it won't take much effort for us to sort the problem out or to go a long way towards helping it. So helping someone to get over this. So if you see someone who needs help, it's not going to take much of your time to make things better. So that might be one way in which the Earth Chiron trine can be used. Okay, so we now have to consider my forecasts for the 12 signs. So astrologically, I said I don't think there's a huge amount going on today. The action this week starts sort of later on. It starts really from Tuesday onwards, and there are some important aspects, quite important stressful aspects that we do need to take into consideration. But maybe today there's a little oasis, so we maybe need to take advantage of that. And I think that also relates to the fact that the moon doesn't make any aspects, not any exact aspects. It's just making a weak aspect to weak sextile to Jupiter, and its aspect to Mercury. But as I said, not a great deal going on. But let's see what we can find. So let's turn to the normal view. Okay, so these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Monday, June the 10th, 2024. Aries, you're now getting used to the fact that Mars is moving through Taurus. So Mars has changed sign. On Sunday, Mars moved out of Aries into Taurus. And I think you're now starting to feel that things are slowing down, that you're able to take a longer term view. So it's not just about things happening now this minute. You're prepared to think ahead to maybe what you might be able to achieve, middle of next month, when Mars moves out of Taurus into Gemini. So it's okay to slow things down. But still, you do seem to feel that you're under a bit of pressure. And that is because Mars, which is your ruler, is square Pluto. So Mars square Pluto can be about concerns with power. You want to know about how much power you have and how well you're going to be how well you're going to be able to assert yourself. And it's true that you can make a powerful impression. It's because you keep going. Maybe other people are distracted and they can put a little bit of energy in one direction, but they move on. But you are not moving on. You are just staying in one place. You've got one goal, one ambition, and I suppose if you keep pushing, you will eventually get your way. Though you do have to consider, I think, the impact you're having on other people, and you don't want to be too impatient. It may be better, for example, to get your way over a period of a week rather than over a period of a day. Yes, if you want things done quickly, I suppose you can get them done quickly. But in the process, you could cause a lot of damage and things could get destroyed. Whereas if you just took a week doing it, then people would get more used to you. And I think in the end, there would be less opposition. At the same time, maybe you should take some time to relax. The moon is in Leo. The moon in Leo is not really making many aspects. It's making a sextile to Jupiter. It's applying to a sextile of Mercury. It's not under a great deal of pressure. And Leo, from an Aries perspective, it's a very creative sign, and Leo is a fire sign, and so Aries is a fire sign. And so with the moon in Leo, just do something that you enjoy today, and don't worry about getting immediate results. There is, I don't think, Aries, any hurry. Taurus. I think, Taurus, you may actually be quite ambitious in your own way. You're feeling that the spotlight is maybe moving on to you in some respects. It's not like you're in the public eye. It's just that the universe is focusing on you and maybe wants you to do something. I mean, left to your own devices, you might feel that it would just be easier to do nothing. There can be that tendency in any Taurus. But at the moment, you just feel that there is pressure. And I think that the pressure is caused by the fact that Mars is now in Taurus, and Mars is applying to a square of Pluto. And this Mars square Pluto does, in one sense, put you in a very powerful position. But it does mean that you are not particularly relaxed. You'd like to be relaxed, but you can't be relaxed. And so I suppose, Taurus, you might consider how you can assert yourself and what the best way of asserting yourself is. With Pluto moving into Aquarius, Pluto in Aquarius, Pluto's been in Aquarius for some time. I understand Pluto's going retrograde in Aquarius, but Aquarius is quite a high-profile sign for Taurans. And so if you're doing anything relating to work or career or business, I think you will be ambitious, and I think you're going to be able to get traction. Now, in terms of your charm, I mean, you do have to relate to other people. That always matters, doesn't it? What impact you're going to have. Your charm is not going to be immediate. People are not going to immediately think that you're completely wonderful and will do everything you say. It's not like that. Your charm is slower. It's more persistent. You're just always there. People notice that you're always there, and they get used to you, and slowly you move things in your direction. And I think that is how Mars square Pluto is actually working. But it's important, Taurus, to ask yourself why you are doing what you're doing. I think you are ambitious, and there are things you decide you want. But then, why do you want them? And what is the basis for your ambitions? Because I think that some Taurians are a little bit confused. They're not open with themselves, honest about their confusion, but there are certain things you don't fully get. Or maybe I think it's more about not being subtle enough. Now, Taurus, in terms of the subtlety stakes, is not the most subtle of the 12 signs. There is something rather blunt about Taurus, and Taurus can also just, I don't know, steamroll over nuances, just ignoring the nuances. But there are subtleties that need to be taken into account. And this applies, I think, especially to the way you deal with other people. You have to listen to what they're saying, feel what they're saying. If you just make assumptions, you could seem somehow crude, blunt, and out of place. And that can be a problem for many Taurians. So you have to take some time to think and feel, and then you'll be able to come over in an effective way. So a bit of patience is there, and don't just think it's all about getting results without thinking about the human dimension. Just give yourself a bit of time to feel the situation through, and to you make the most of your sensitivity. Gemini, there are things you want to say, and I think you can certainly say them, but you don't have to make a big thing about it. It's not about making a fuss. It's not about making dramatic statements. Not really. You're quite interesting. People are not going to be overwhelmed by you. So I would have said it's really a time to just take it easy, do some visiting, but without thinking that you're going to actually accomplish very much. I mean, this is the issue at the moment. Accomplishment is going to be hard work because there isn't just not enough application. And in a way, Gemini, it's more of a time for making preparations, making sure that everyone understands you, making sure you understand them, gentle conversation, but never taking it too seriously. Because if you take things too seriously, you're just really not going to be able to get anything done. Because I suppose other people are not going to take you seriously. So that, in a way, is pretty much it. It's not going to be an especially interesting day. It's just a day when you can, I suppose, be yourself, because it's not going to be a great deal of pressure. Though there is a sense in which you do understand what is right and wrong. It's quite subtle, but you just get this feeling about what should be done and what should not be done, and I think that can guide you. So Gemini, just go with it and avoid dramatic initiatives, not because they're going to cause you any damage, but because they're not going to have much of an impact. So perhaps what you should be doing is, if you've got some big idea, something you'd really like to talk about, something you'd like to express, don't express it today. Because today, the external environment is it's not going to be supportive of it. It's not going to be appreciative. People won't understand what you're doing. People won't give you the feedback you're looking for, and you might then feel a great sense of disappointment that you've fired something off and it failed. So best to save it all for later in the week when there is more drama and when you're likely to get more attention. So sorry, Gemini. I'm a Gemini, and so perhaps that's how I feel as well. That there isn't a great deal going on. That Monday is a little bit of a desert, but I don't think any harm is going to be done. Cancer. You are perhaps thinking about money, but in a gentle way. I mean, Cancers always regard money as being fairly important. At least a healthy, grounded Cancer understands the importance of money. And there are things you can do in a gentle way to elucidate your financial situation. In other words, to sort of understand what is happening. And once you understand what is happening, you will be in a better position to get results. And at the same time, you should regard money as being something that is just there to be used or not used. It's not about your personality. I suppose you might think that a little bit with the moon in Leo. So moon in Leo, for a Cancerian, you might feel that you need to spend money, not because you want to spend money, but because there's a certain expectation to spend money. It's just expected of you. And if you don't spend money, for some reason, people might feel badly about you. I mean, this is not anything that you should be worrying about. You need to do what's right for yourself and not worry about external pressure. And with external pressure, I think you'll be very aware of external pressure if you decide to surround yourself with people. Too many people could be a real problem. You might find that complications just arise out of nowhere, and you don't need complications. You don't want complications, but certain people are complicated, and they could just create needless issues. So I would have said, Cancer, just steer clear of crowds. You don't need crowds. Crowds are not going to make your life any easier or any happier. I know that it's nice to be sociable sometimes, but I don't think now is a time for Cancerians to be sociable. I think that you need things to happen on your terms, and as soon as you involve other people, then it's not on your terms anymore. Though, as the day progresses, the moon does start making a sextile to Mercury, and with this moon sextile Mercury, you can start to communicate, but only communicate things that are really important to the right people. So there are messages that have to be delivered, but messages which are carefully targeted, and which are only targeted on one person. And there may be a certain temptation to talk too much. Why would you want to talk too much? It might be a question of ego. When you think about when you give away too much information, I mean, all of us do this. We give away too much information. Why do we give away too much information? Very often, people give away too much information because they just feel a need to impress. They feel a need to get someone's attention. So you give away this information because you feel that it's the right thing to do. And the moment you've said it, the moment you've said those words, you just immediately regret them. So, Cancer, especially later in the day, be careful what you say. you just may be tempted to say something that is unnecessary. It's either the information is unnecessary or you're talking to the wrong person. So if in doubt, don't say it. Leo, there is something that you are holding back, even though the sun is moving through your sign. So Leo, you're not entirely comfortable in social situations, I don't think. You just feel that you're not being fully appreciated. And at the same time, with the moon moving through your sign, I think you are quite sensitive. You really do notice how other people are treating you or mistreating you. And I think that you do want a certain amount of attention. But are you going to be getting this attention? I think that the answer is probably not. And I really don't think you should take this personally. I think what's happening today is that a lot of people are focused on their own needs and they haven't got time to focus on anyone else except themselves and perhaps their family. And so don't have too many expectations. But that doesn't mean to say you can't make progress. The moon in Leo is making a sextile aspect to a very wide Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. So Mercury is at 15 Gemini, Jupiter's at 3 Gemini. The moon is kind of sextiling the midpoint of Mercury and Jupiter. And so with that sextile, I think that you are able to come over in quite a positive way. Now, it doesn't matter if you feel you're being ignored. You're not going to upset anyone. If you say something, at absolute worst, it'll be ignored. At best, you might impress someone in a very gentle way. I mean, don't expect fireworks, but your social skills are pretty good today. You will do as well as you can. You're not going to achieve a huge amount because it's just not that kind of day. But maybe what you're doing instead is you are opening doors, creating the possibility of future advances in a social sense, and maybe tomorrow, Tuesday, is going to be easier. Tomorrow, for example, the moon will be starting to make a sextile to the sun, and the sun is your ruler, and so there'll be more application. But right now, Leo, there isn't a great deal of application, and I'm not singling you out. It's a problem for everyone. I just think that today there's just not enough going on for all of us. So it's Monday. It's the beginning of a week. It just is a week that may take a little bit of time to warm up. Though, if I was to give one warning, just remember that Mars is starting to make a square to Pluto. Now, this square to Pluto is exact tomorrow. But it seems that there is a situation brewing where someone is trying to assert themselves, is starting to assert themselves. And they've only just got going. And it may be a power issue. So who is concerned about power? Who is trying to throw their weight around? I don't think they're necessarily throwing their weight around today, but they could start throwing their weight around tomorrow. So look around. Who could be a problem very soon? I don't think they're a problem right now, but I think they could be a problem maybe by tomorrow. Virgo. I have been fairly downbeat in my forecasts for the signs so far. And, the reason is that there is not a great deal going on astrologically. And you are part of this too. You have your ambitions, you want things to happen, and you've perhaps got a particular time scale. And Virgo, you perhaps just have to accept right now that things aren't going to move as quickly as you'd like, and there may be delays. But still, Virgo, I do understand that you've got ambitions, and so the question is, how best should you try to achieve these ambitions? Well, the moon in Leo is making a sextile to Mercury. Now, this sextile to Mercury, it's more of a feature of late in the day, maybe even tomorrow, but it's still moving towards Mercury. So even if it's not exactly on Mercury, exactly sextile with Mercury, it's still there. And so with this moon sextile Mercury, you're slowly trying to find the words and trying to find the best way of expressing yourself. And you should perhaps accept that it may take time. And at the same time, you don't want things to be out there and obvious. If everyone can see something, if it's done in the open, in public, it's unlikely to work. In fact, it could be worse than useless. It could be embarrassing. On the other hand, if you can find a way of working behind the scenes, doing what is necessary, not worrying about your ego, not worrying if you're not getting enough praise. It's not that kind of day. Yeah, I know the moon is in Leo. I know that there's a temptation to sort of try to go out of your way to get attention, but it's really unnecessary, and it's best that you just do things almost rather secretively. You know what needs to be done. You don't need to ask anyone's permission. You don't need to explain what you're doing. You just go and do it. And in that way, you can prime things for a later date, priming things perhaps for tomorrow or the day after. Remember, the moon does go into Virgo in a couple of days' time, and perhaps that's what you're waiting for. You're priming for the moon going into Virgo. And when the moon goes into Virgo, it'll make a trine to Mars, and that's perhaps when you're going to be able to start to get things to make things happen. But right now, it's okay not to get attention. And this even applies to how you deal with relationships, because Mercury rules Virgo, and Mercury is fairly close to Jupiter, but that aspect between Mercury and Jupiter is separating. In fact, they are now 12 degrees apart. That's a long way. That's a long way that Mercury has moved, but it still has relevance. There's you and someone else are still close enough to be in touch, even if you're separating a bit. And the moon in Leo, it makes a sextile to Jupiter, and it makes a sextile to Mercury. And this may be about you being in a position where you can get back together with someone who you feel is moving out of your life. And there's a certain sense of regret. Maybe you feel there's work that has to be done, and you would like to get back. And it seems that there's action you can take, not dramatic action. It's very subtle action. It's behind the scenes action that can allow you and someone else to come back together. So think about it, Virgo. If there's someone you feel that you would like in your life, or you'd like to talk to, and you feel you missed your chance, it could be for any reason. I don't know, not necessarily romantic. It could be just, it could be a friendship, it could be something to do with work, someone you just feel you'd like to say more to, then that is definitely something you can do to get back together with this person. But it does require a great deal of subtlety, and subtlety is just important through everything that you do. I do think, Virgo, for example, that you know the answers. You feel, that you have some kind of superiority in terms of knowledge. You just know it. But that doesn't mean to say that you have to set yourself up as an authority figure. That would not be appreciated. There are ways you can assert your authority where you don't have to be noticed. And it's all about getting results. It's not about getting attention. And if you think about the result rather than you getting attention, then I think you'll be in a position to get your way. But you just have to be subtle. Subtlety is just really important today. In fact, it's not just important for you. I think in general, probably for all 12 signs, a degree of subtlety really does matter. Libra, you have got lots of ideas. There are lots of things going through your head. But that doesn't mean that all of these ideas can be trusted. Perhaps you've reached a few wrong conclusions. You haven't completely understood something. And as a result, there's a certain danger that you might make mistakes. And I think part of a problem might be the fact that Venus, which is your ruler, is still under a bit of pressure. I think that pressure is subsiding. But, Venus is still pretty close to the Sun, and it's still pretty close to the square of Saturn. Yeah, things are getting better, but I don't think that you're out of the woods. And you continue to have ideas which are not entirely sensible, or there may be a sense of wishful thinking. You assume that things are going to be fine when maybe they're not going to be fine at all, because you've made assumptions. Now, if you've made an assumption, then you need to work out what that assumption is, and then you need to fix it. We're not talking about a situation where you are doomed to make mistakes. In fact, 90% of your ideas, 90% of your plans may be absolutely great, but it's just that there's a 10% that could ruin things for you. Also, I should point out that Venus, from a heliocentric perspective, is applying to a square of Mars. Now, this square to Mars is not exact at the moment, but I think that you can feel it. It relates perhaps to you and another person, or just you to just people in general. And there's just this certain uneasiness here, that it occurs to you that you and other people are not entirely on the same wavelength, and maybe that bothers you. And it also perhaps occurs to you that some people are incredibly stubborn, and it's all about you getting used to the fact that Mars is in Taurus. Mars rules Aries. Aries is your opposite sign. So if Mars is in Taurus, that is saying something about the other person. Mars in Taurus can be stubborn, it can be slow, it can be deliberate. And when Mars is square Pluto, and well, tomorrow the Mars square Pluto is exact, but it's still around. When Mars is square Pluto, you can be dealing with someone who is really set in their ways, and they absolutely refuse to compromise. So how do you deal with this situation? It may be best that you just don't deal with the situation, or you pay careful attention to the way power is being exercised. Now, Libra has the scales as its symbol. So the concepts of power and who has the power is actually very important to the average Libran. You understand it. And so perhaps you should use this understanding to try to really understand how someone else is using their power, maybe to manipulate you. So do consider that. Finally, I should say something about your spirituality. Now, I said at the beginning of this piece on Libra that there was some danger that you got a bit confused, that some of your ideas are not 100% there, that they need to be sorted out. But we can see that in a different way. You are getting access to interesting information of a sort of cosmic, universal nature. And it's becoming clearer now, because Venus is starting to move away from a conjunction of the Sun. And you have a sense of something out there, perhaps something trying to communicate with you. When I say something communicate with you, it may be your unconscious, it may be some insight into the cosmos, maybe the cosmos itself talking to you. And this information is coming your way, and you are picking up on it. It may not be immediately clear what it's all about, but I think it could be useful and most importantly elevating. And so maybe what today is all about, indeed what the last few days is all about, is freeing yourself from something. Freeing yourself from people and situations that are distracting you, holding you back, are just preventing you from seeing your potential, preventing you from seeing the wide world as it is. And you are trying to throw all this stuff away and break free. And I think you are starting to break free. And you're also breaking free through some of your ideas. And that's why your ideas are starting to flow. And they really are. But these ideas do need to be worked through. But there is a sense of communicating with something which is higher from yourself. And you need to build on that. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't feel that the first impulse you get is the correct impulse. Work on it. Or should I say, sit on it. Allow the impulse to develop. Allow your relationship with the cosmos to develop. Not just today, but over the next few days, and then you will be moving in the right direction. Scorpio, you are very aware of the power dynamics. And this is because Mars, which is your ruler, is starting to make a square with Pluto. Now, this square between Mars and Pluto is not exact until tomorrow, but I do feel that you are really picking up on it. Power is a concept that is very important to Scorpios, and you are aware of who has the power, who doesn't have the power, and also whether or not you have the power. And when dealing with other people, you will always, I think, be asking yourself, how much power does this person have? And how much power does this person have relative to you? And that power equation may really be of interest to you. But the question is, how concerned should you be? Should you be obsessed about issues of power? Just because you're in a position where you don't have as much power as you like, is that necessarily the end of the world? I think in most cases, probably not. Some people just like to be in control. It makes them feel happy. And if that's the way it is, and you're not dealing with anything too critical, then you should perhaps just leave them to it. Though, I suppose if someone is really throwing their weight around in quite an obnoxious way, then you may feel that you have to do something. The question is, what do you do, and what can you do? I think that today is not a time to be asserting yourself in a major way. You might like to, but I don't think you'll get very much done, and I don't think you'll have much of an impact. And in fact, if you try to assert yourself today, you may actually have a sense of your own powerlessness, because you're testing something. You want to test, how much power do I have? You put the thing to the test, and you might, in the first instance, realize that you don't have very much power. But this is a temporary situation, and you have to recognize that what power you do have is quite understated. It's a kind of power that doesn't have to be advertised. And we have the moon at the moment. Moon is in Leo. And the moon in Leo does represent you to an extent, because I understand Mars is your ruler, but not the moon. But still, the moon is in Leo, which is, from a Scorpio perspective, is quite a high-profile sign. And the moon represents you, and that represents you trying to make an impression, trying to get noticed, trying to get things done, perhaps, trying to get attention. And there is a fragility there. And because there's a fragility there, you need to make the most of your strengths. And, right now, your strengths represented by something quite internal. It's your own confidence. It's your own belief about how things are going to work out. And maybe having a knowledge about the way things are going. Other people might appear to be in a stronger position from you, but they don't have the knowledge or the intuition. So, they could be like, I don't know, shooting stars. They make a big impression, but it doesn't actually come to much. And you certainly don't want to be a shooting star. It's better to build up your power slowly. And I do think that is something you can really do. And it's not just your power. It's also about your popularity and your connections and your network of friends and associates. And this is something that you actually can do. You're going to be, I think, fairly charismatic today. It may not be immediately obvious how charismatic you are, but if you make an overture to someone, that overture is unlikely to be rejected, and one thing can lead to another thing. And by the end of the day, you might realize that you do have a lot of support. And so in terms of power, it's not just about you, it's also about the support you have. And so I think it's a slightly complicated day, but you are a Scorpio, and being a Scorpio, you can deal with these complications. Sagittarius. The moon is in Leo. It's a fire sign. So from a Sagittarius view, that is good. I mean, when the moon is in a fire sign, you feel a certain sense of comfort. Everything is in the right place, and you're getting the fuel you need. And this is particularly important because from an elemental perspective, everything has moved out of Aries now. There's now nothing in Aries, well, except the North Node and Chiron. You see, when Mars was in Aries, Mars was in a fire sign, and you're in a fire sign, and that Mars in Aries gave you a bit of energy. It gave you the spark. And with Mars moving out of Aries, you might feel that some of the spark has gone. And there's a lot of stuff in Gemini. Gemini is very nice, but Gemini perhaps talks too much, and there isn't that spark. And so you might have felt that things were just a little bit flat. But the moon is now in Leo, so that does provide some energy, something for you to focus on. And perhaps you need to recognize that the spark that you need, the inspiration that you crave perhaps, can't be found in the usual places. Perhaps you're finding that people that used to be interesting are now boring. Places that used to be exciting are now just almost derelict. That does happen, doesn't it? Places can only be exciting for so long, and then they lose it. And so perhaps, Sagittarius, you need to expand your horizons. Sagittarians always have to expand their horizons. That's a sort of standard Sagittarian thing. But with Moon moving into Leo, Moon actually it moved into Leo, I think, last night, depending on your time zone, but it is in Leo, and it is making a sextile to Mercury. So action can be found, but just it's not going to be found in the usual places. So you may have to go a little further afield, and you may also have to take some kind of bold initiative, probably of a social nature. So many Sagittarians might feel that there is maybe a group, or that a group or a society or an organization that you feel you need to break into, that you need to just get involved. And in the first instance, you might be wondering, how can you get involved? And you might feel a certain amount of alienation. How can you get in contact with this group of people? It doesn't seem to be possible. But I think that at the moment, the potential for making some kind of breakthrough is very real, and you can actually make it happen. And you're also helped by the fact that Jupiter is trine Pluto. Now, Jupiter has been trine Pluto geocentrically for quite a long time, for a few weeks, but heliocentrically, we now have a Jupiter trine Pluto as well. So the heliocentric and the geocentric Jupiter trine Pluto are really coming together. And with that Jupiter trine Pluto, it's all about self-improvement. It's all about making things better. And I think any sense of negativity on your part today might be because you feel that you're not able to make things better. But that's just sort of a temporary feeling. The reality is you can make things better, because Jupiter's just come together. Jupiter's just come together with Pluto, trine Pluto, Jupiter trine Pluto heliocentrically. So you don't have to be satisfied with the way things are. And if things are boring, then change it. You can find excitement, but just don't go to the normal places. You may have to go somewhere further afield, though of course don't do anything particularly dangerous or risky. I always have to say that, but I don't want you to encourage you to go on dangerous adventures. You don't have to go that further afield, but the opportunities are definitely there if you are ready to look for them. Capricorn, your talents and your abilities are on great form, and it's just really important that you don't doubt yourself, and also that you don't worry too much about what other people are thinking and saying. That can always be a problem. When we have abilities, and very often we give up on these abilities or these talents or what we can, things we're really good at, because we're just simply not getting enough feedback. And praise is so important. Just appreciation, it just matters so much. And so, Capricorn, just because people are not engaging with what you are doing, just because people don't seem impressed with what you're doing, you're not getting praise, it shouldn't matter. Just keep doing what you're good at in your own way. And what other people are doing, what other people are thinking, should really be only of secondary or tertiary importance. So, really, Capricorn, it's maybe a time when you need to be quite self-contained, and you should not be in a situation where you are dependent on other people's feedback. Yeah, if you get good feedback, that is great, but you certainly shouldn't expect it, and you shouldn't get annoyed if you're not getting the feedback you feel you deserve. And this is not, in a way, typically Capricorn behavior, wanting feedback. But I suppose we have to remember that the moon is in Leo, and with the moon in Leo, people can be a bit touchy, and people can want attention, and that includes you. It also includes some of the people around you. So if you are not getting attention yourself, that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't pay attention to others. Sure, if other people are being mean with their praise, it doesn't mean to say that you have to be mean with your praise. In fact, if you go out of your way to make someone feel good, even if it feels inappropriate, even if you feel that, strictly speaking, someone doesn't actually deserve any praise or attention, it could break the deadlock. And it, particularly coming from a Capricorn. I mean, Capricorns are often quite economical with their praise. They don't tell people that they're wonderful just for the sake of it. But if you can go out of your way to perhaps break the pattern a little, I think that would be very much appreciated. And even if the person doesn't reciprocate that praise, it doesn't matter. You are breaking the ice. And I should just remind you that, still what matters is you. You don't have to spend very long on making people feel good about themselves, because it is about you. But I do think, Capricorn, you are actually quite sensitive today. You're quite sensitive to what people are feeling and thinking and what they're worrying about. And with the moon making a sextile to Mercury, you're going to be very tuned into people's thoughts and their worries. And I think that's going to really help you in terms of making people feel good. You're just going to know what to say. You don't have to say very much, and really that should be enough. So, Capricorn, it's kind of up to you what happens today. I don't think that there's going to be external events coming in that are going to force you to dramatically change your plans. You know, you might be slightly annoyed by other people's attitudes. Some people have the wrong attitudes, perhaps the wrong attitudes about money, because there is this square aspect between Mars and Pluto. And I kind of see Mars, because Mars is in Taurus, I see Mars as probably representing you, and Pluto representing things out there which aren't to your taste, maybe of a financial nature. And I think that money is going to be an issue in many different areas. Even if money shouldn't be an issue, even if it's very small amounts of money, it could get out of control very quickly. So if you're talking about small amounts of money, then don't be the one to get obsessed about it. Let other people be obsessed, and perhaps be the one to diffuse the situation. Whereas if it's larger amounts of money, then yes, something might need to be done. And there could actually be a situation where people are not worrying about large amounts of money, about amounts of money they should be worrying about, but instead are worrying about, you know, smaller sums, which may be neither here nor there. So get your priorities right financially, and also make sure that other people are getting their priorities right financially, because I think that there are some people whose priorities are wrong. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you have to deal with the issue right now, today. In fact, tomorrow might be a better time for I don't know, raising your concerns. Today, you might feel that you're just not getting anywhere and that people aren't listening to you. But I think tomorrow, people will find it easier to listen to what you're saying. Unless, of course, you are praising them. As I've said, it's a great day for giving people praise. It might seem appropriate, but I think it can really help things move. Aquarius. Don't be surprised if some people are just holding things back. It's that kind of day. And those close to you, I believe, are holding something back. They're not giving you the whole truth, the whole story. They're not telling you how they feel. They're just only giving you an edited version. So if you get any versions of the truth, don't take them too seriously, but don't question them. I don't think you want to push people saying, no, I need more information. You haven't told me the truth. I think you're not feeling this. I think you're not feeling the way you are claiming to feel. I think you're feeling something else. Don't push people. I think that later on the truth will come out, but maybe not today, and just be satisfied with just snippets of information. And still, other people are going to matter, Aquarius, because the moon is in Leo. I mean, it's kind of unsatisfactory, because the moon is, yes, it's in Leo, but it's not really making any close aspects. It's like, people are important, people are there, but what good are they? Are they actually doing anything useful? And so there might be a certain sense of frustration going on here, just feeling that things should be moving, but they're not moving. And yeah, that could be quite annoying. So what you have to do, perhaps, is be patient. The moon is making a sextile aspect to Mercury, and that might be more of a feature later in the day and into tomorrow, but it's still applying to that sextile of Mercury. So that means that getting information, communicating, is a slow and drawn out process. And it may be all about getting someone's trust, and getting someone's trust could take a fair amount of time. Now, don't get totally obsessed with other people and how useful and how useless they might be. You do have to pay some attention to yourself, because right now your skills and your abilities are on really good form. There is a heliocentric an heliocentric trine between Jupiter and Pluto. We've already got a geocentric trine. Now we've got this heliocentric sign. And this Jupiter-Pluto trine for you is, I think, really very creative and very transforming. And in your own way, you can change everything. And the amazing thing is that no one is aware of what's happening except you. You are aware of the changes that are taking place, and you are now in a position to very soon benefit from them. But at first, it's your show. You don't need any attention. You don't need any support. You don't need any encouragement. It all comes from you. And being an Aquarius, that is the way it should be, because Aquarius is a very independent-minded sign, and you like to do things your way. You don't like to be told what to do, and you should be happy about that. And at the same time, you are almost preparing your case. You're preparing how you are going to present yourself to a wider world. Presenting everything you can do, all your abilities. They're right there. They're very clear. But today is probably not the day for doing it. It's just, as I said, it's just not that kind of day. It's more about what happens later in the week. So if, for example, Aquarius, you've got a presentation to make, or maybe you've got an interview coming up in the near future, then now would be a great time to be preparing for it. You don't need, as I said, you don't need any outside help. You're doing it in your own way. You know exactly how it should be. You don't need any advice. And I think that it is coming together. So a day for quiet preparation, having a sense of your own selfhood and your own independence, and at the same time not being too frustrated by other people. Yes, other people do matter to an extent, but don't expect too much from them, but just be there just in case. You can't shut people out entirely, but I don't have any expectations in that department. I think that things will be easier tomorrow when the moon in Leo starts making a sextile aspect to the sun. Pisces, you potentially have the ability to make things happen. The question is, Pisces, how do you make things happen? If you try to make things happen through gradual efforts, then I don't think anything will happen. On the other hand, if you can use the element of surprise and shock, then I think you can make things happen in a big way. Because that's what people want. Things are a little boring, and people expect things to be boring. When things start to happen, they make the assumption that nothing is going to happen. And so the only way to move things on is to create a big event, to create a big surprise, to come over in a dramatic way, to change the way people think. So it's those first few seconds that matter in terms of making an impression. If you get the first few seconds wrong, you might have blown it. Assuming that you want to make a big impression. I mean, it may be that you that you don't, in which case that's fine. I mean, there's nothing that has to happen today, but if you want something to happen today, I just think that you have to be ready to be a little dramatic and to give people a shock to their system. But don't ignore your own system. From a physical point of view, you are perhaps a little more fragile than usual, a little bit. So don't push yourself harder than you have to. And if you feel that you haven't got enough energy to do something, then that's okay. It's okay to sort of hold back. And what you need is space. I think that really is important. And you don't need any clutter. And I think with the moon moving through Leo, it's a difficult placement in a way for Pisces, because Pisces and Leo don't have much to do with each other. Pisces is a water sign. It's a mutable sign, and the moon is a fire sign. It's a fixed sign. Pisces and Leo, it's not really very connected, and if you're not careful, you might feel that you are sort of alienated, not just from yourself, not just from the world around you, but basically from your own system, maybe even your bodily system. And so you need to be in an environment where you are well looked after, and that you're not doing anything that is going to put too much pressure on you. And for example, it's not a time for excessive physical burden. And watch your back. Your back could be a bit vulnerable today. So not a time for be sort of leaning over, I don't know, whatever you might be doing, weeding or putting pressure on the spine or lifting heavy objects. That is definitely not to be recommended. But I mean, I don't want to be dramatic about it. I'm not saying anything bad will happen. I just think that is something that you perhaps should bear in mind. Finally, Pisces, there's a heliocentric trine today between Jupiter and Pluto. Remember, Jupiter is your ruler. So with this heliocentric trine between Jupiter and Pluto, I do think that you can make things happen. And you particularly need to think, where in your life do you feel that you're not performing? Where are you disappointing yourself? Where do you think things could be better? Do ask these questions today. Be realistic, because there are areas of underperformance which you can address, like immediately. Don't just do nothing. Just work out what it is, and then just act. Because right now, you do have a great need for self-improvement. And if you're not self-improving, if you're not improving yourself, you're not going to be happy. So if you want to be happy, just take every opportunity to be a better person. And if there's, for example, a skill that you only have in a rudimentary sense and that you feel you need to get better at it, then do work it out. And it might not take very long. It might just be reading something on the internet, spending 5 minutes on it, doing a bit of practice, and in 10 minutes you could have sorted the problem out. So that might be a way in which the Jupiter trine Pluto could be working. Okay, Pisces, that's it. And I will now move from the 12 signs to the I Ching. So, as always, I ask the question, what is Monday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video. The first hexagram I got was hexagram 4, youthful folly. Now, this hexagram is a bit of a problem because it is a warning from the I Ching that you should not be consulting it. The I Ching is very patient, but there are sometimes limits to its patience. And if it gets consulted too often, then it might get annoyed. And you could argue that I consult the I Ching every day for this video. I don't know what the I Ching thinks about that. But youthful folly is indicating that it's already told you the answer several times, and it's just not going to answer you anymore. That is a possibility. So in terms of what you're coming into this reading with, it may be that you already know the answer. You don't have to be told. So it's a waste of time. So in that sense, I could say, well, you should not be watching this video. You don't watch this. Don't watch any more of this I Ching reading because you've already been told. You know the answer. That's it. So that's one approach. Another approach is to say, well, you're involved with something that you're not really very familiar with. Youthful folly. I mean, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's about an activity or something that you're just not very experienced with. And so because of that, you're likely to make mistakes, and you perhaps don't know what you're doing, and you're perhaps looking for guidance and help, and it might just seem that the universe is not particularly sympathetic. Fortunately, there is a moving line, and the fifth line is moving. Now, in the I Ching, the fifth line is usually the most fortunate of the 6 lines, and with that fifth line, we may get the indication. We may get the impression that you actually understand your own limitations, and because you understand your limitations, because you understand your inexperience, because you understand that this is a situation that is somewhat alien, there is a certain amount of sympathy there, and from the universe. And also, I think you accept because you accept your limitations, and you accept that some people know things better than you, and so that does put you in a better position. There is that humility which the universe appreciates. So if you're involved with something that's difficult, then it's great that you understand it's difficult, and it's great that you understand that there are people out there who know how to do it better than you. And this moves to a different hexagram because we've got a moving line, and it moves to dispersion. Dispersion is about the rains, about something being washed away. And it's like you're involved with something that is a bit over your head, and it is troubling, and you understand that you haven't got all the answers. And then dispersion happens. This is a situation that at first seems bad. You're involved with something that perhaps goes out of control. You can't deal with it. It goes from bad to worse. That's how it seems. It's like a rainstorm. But what's actually happening is we're getting a situation of chaos where things are being moved all over the place. And there may be a moment where you just totally lose touch with everything. And then the rains subside, and you get to see where you are, where you've landed. And what's actually happened is that you've landed in a better place. So as a result of chaos, you're in a situation where you've moved beyond the crisis, and with dispersion, it's often a concept a bit like a power washer. Everything gets power washed, everything gets removed. So a lot of the garbage has been taken away, and so I think that this clearing of the decks is really going to improve things. And so what seemed to be a difficult situation turns into an even more difficult situation, turns into a situation of complete chaos. But when the dust settles, you realize that actually everything's okay. So let me now turn to the Olympics. As I said at the beginning, I'm not a great fan of the Olympics. I never watch the Olympics. I don't care about the Olympics. I haven't watched the Olympics since 1972. When, of course, there was a lot of drama. And, God, 1972, I was 10 in 1972. Yeah, it was sort of interesting then. But, well, that was during the Cold War, when the Olympics was something really, really worth looking at, perhaps, particularly when you had the superpower rivalry, but not anymore, particularly if Russia's no longer turning up. But so let's start with a bad Olympics. The Munich Olympics. So let's begin with the opening ceremony of these Olympics. So these Olympics started. This is the opening ceremony of the Munich Olympics, which was apparently at 3 p.m. on August 26, 1972, and this opening ceremony really does indicate that they had not consulted astrologers. It's really difficult, as you can see. So at the opening ceremony of the Munich Olympics, so by the way, just to remind you, I've already said it in the introduction, just to remind you that during the Munich Olympics, there was a Palestinian terrorist organization, Black September. It attacked the Israeli team. A lot of them were killed. There was hostages. There was huge drama about the Palestinians trying to do deals with the German authorities, and there was a shootout. It was just a total mess. So the Munich Olympics is as bad as it gets. And if you take 3 p.m. as the opening time, then we have Uranus was exactly on the midheaven, and Chiron was on the IC, and Saturn was on a descendant. So this is a really bad time to start something, particularly if it's supposed to be some happy event about, I don't know, nations coming together. But no, not really, with Saturn on the descendant and Uranus on the midheaven. Uranus is a planet of dramatic events. It's on the midheaven. Saturn is about, I suppose, the hidden enemy. It's out there, and the Olympics is under attack. And there's a Sun-Mars conjunction in the 8th house, and the Moon is on Skeet. Not exactly on Skeet, but the Moon the Skeet is a fixed star relating to disasters. All sorts of bad things can happen with Skeet, and can be associated with shipwrecks. And that Moon in Pisces is applying to a square with Jupiter, and in fact, it's also the moment it changes sign, it makes an opposition with Pluto. So we've got Moon opposition Pluto, square Jupiter. So there are plenty of signs in there that something could go wrong. And the attack itself happened about 10 days later, on September the 5th, 1972, at 4:31 a.m. I think that this is when the terrorists broke into the apartment or the living quarters of the Israeli team. And that Sun conjunct Mars, which was in the opening ceremony chart, was applying, was 3 degrees apart, but now it had become exact. And this is of course when the attack happened. And what's really interesting, let's actually put these two charts side by side. So we're going to put the opening ceremony in the middle, and we're going to put the attack on the outside. So at the opening ceremony, Uranus was at around sort of 1559 Libra, and Chiron was at 1647 Aries. And at the time of the attack, the Uranus was at 1629 Libra, so it had moved on a bit, and Chiron was at 1629 Aries. So Uranus and Chiron were exactly opposition each other, exactly opposition. So the potential of that opening ceremony was realized when that aspect became exact. So Chiron is, of course, the wound. Uranus opposition Chiron is a dreadful attack, apparently coming out of nowhere. Even though everyone knew it could happen, apparently when they were doing the preparations of a security, this almost exact scenario was considered, but they didn't do enough to make sure it didn't happen, obviously. And so look at the Sun-Mars conjunction at the time of the opening ceremony in the Munich Olympics. It was 4 degrees apart, and then by the time the attack happened, it was much closer, almost exact. And Mercury crossed the ascendant when the attack happened. So this, if you like, is the benchmark of a bad Olympics. And so when we look at the Paris Olympics and the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics, we have to ask, is it as bad as the opening ceremony for the Munich Olympics? So here is the opening ceremony for the Paris Olympics, July the 26th, 2024. It is not as bad as the Munich Olympics. 29 Sagittarius rising, so pretty much 0 degrees Capricorn rising. I suppose you've got Mercury trine the ascendant. Sun is sextile Mars, so I suppose if you want to have Olympics, athletics, and you've got Sun in Leo, sextile Mars in Gemini, I mean, that's good, isn't it? I mean, that might suggest a good Olympics. The moon is trine Venus. So again, if you're trying to make an election, if you're trying to choose a good time to do something, then that moon trine Venus it looks good. So is there anything wrong with this chart? Yeah, I think there is. A couple of things wrong. Firstly, Neptune. Neptune is on the Aries point. It's now going retrograde, 2947 Pisces. So Neptune is exactly square the ascendant. It happens. Maybe it's not a big deal, but still you wouldn't really want Neptune to be exactly square the ascendant if you could help it. It would be nice if they could, shift the opening ceremony maybe, 10 minutes later. But no, they want to start at 7:30 p.m. on the dot. Perhaps evidence that an astrologer was not involved here. So that's one point to make. Pluto is square the midheaven. So the midheaven is at 154 Scorpio, and Pluto is square that midheaven. Again, why did they go for this time? It just doesn't seem to be a very good time. I mean, they could have avoided all of this because these are aspects with the angles, but I think that the chart is spoilt by its timing. And my immediate feeling is that events, perhaps in the outside world, are going to interrupt this Olympics. I don't think it's going to be as smooth as it could be. I think overall there should have been stuff that looks good with that Sun sextile Mars, Moon trine Venus, but Neptune square the ascendant and Pluto square the midheaven. That doesn't entirely bode well. There's something might go wrong. Not, I don't think on the extent of the Munich thing, but it's not desirable. Then you've got the fifth house, and I said right at the beginning of this video that the fifth house is connected with sport and competitive activity, and Uranus is on the fifth house cusp, conjunct Algol. So Uranus is what, 10, 11 minutes off from Algol? Do you really want Uranus so close to this fixed star? I mean, okay, it can't be helped in a way because it's a summer Olympics, and so it just so happens that 2024 Uranus is conjunct Algol. So really, there's nothing much that can be done about it. It's inevitable. It's fated. But Uranus is on the Sun-Saturn midpoint. So there is the Sun at Sun. Sun is 4 degrees Leo. Saturn is at 18, 19 degrees Pisces, and Uranus is there on the Sun-Saturn midpoint. So that might indicate something. I don't think it's going to be entirely smooth, this Olympics, because Uranus conjunct Algol on the Sun-Saturn midpoint. Just wanted to read what Alfred Vetter says about Uranus on the Sun-Saturn midpoint. Maybe this will give us a flavour of the Olympics, maybe it won't. Sun-Saturn, Uranus on the Sun. Trouble or losses through older people, sudden separations. I don't know, older people causing trouble. Well, that might be Biden. Is Biden turning up? I don't know. But it's not perfect, but it's so much better from the Munich Olympics. I don't think we can say on the basis of this chart that it's going to be a bad Olympics. I mean, I know that I like to look at things from a negative perspective, and I'd like to say, oh, for sure it's going to be bad. And there are some things to worry about this chart, but I don't think we can automatically say that things are going to be difficult. Though, as I said, it is going to be a long, hot summer. Not least because Uranus is conjunct Algol. So it's not necessarily that the Olympics themselves are going to have anything go wrong with them. It's just the general environment in which the Olympics is happening. You know, what is going on in Gaza, what is going on in Ukraine. Finally, though, I did want to just look at how the Olympics line up with Emmanuel Macron's chart? I'm sure Emmanuel Macron is taking these Olympics incredibly seriously. Obviously, Emmanuel Macron takes himself incredibly seriously, and he has a very high opinion of himself. And so it's a good idea to look at, here's Emmanuel Macron's chart. As I've already said, I think that Emmanuel Macron is losing the plot when I last looked at his chart. In general, here's a man who's past his peak. He's political peak. He's starting to make mistakes. Things are going wrong for him, and he's making misjudgments. So, he's a fading president who is desperately trying to hang on to his authority. And so, the Olympics is going to be very important for him. So looking at the horoscope of Emmanuel Macron, and we're going to put the Olympics on the opening ceremony in Paris on the outer wheel. Emmanuel Macron has a conjunction between the Sun and Mercury, a very close Sun conjunct Mercury in his horoscope. He has his Sun at 29-25 Sagittarius, and Sun at 29-25 Sagittarius, and Mercury at 29-52 Sagittarius. So it is not surprising that the rising degree at the time of the Paris Olympics is 29 degrees Sagittarius. So that 29 degrees Sagittarius is the degree of Macron's Sun and Mercury, which really does indicate it is all about Macron. And he's presumably going to be really trying to really make it about him, have as high a presence as possible, particularly at this opening ceremony. But we notice that Mercury is, Neptune is at 29-47 Pisces. So Neptune is square the ascendant. And Neptune is therefore square Macron's Mercury, and it is square, moving backwards towards a square with his Sun. So it's all about Macron, this opening ceremony, and it's also all about the fact that that transiting Neptune is square Macron's Sun and Mercury. And I think that this Neptune in the last degree of Pisces is causing all sorts of problems for Macron anyway, in terms of his judgment. I don't think he's able to make good decisions anymore with Neptune square his Mercury. Specifically about Ukraine, but I don't know, there may be other things. If you were French, you'd have a better idea. So I think that the opening ceremony is not necessarily going to put Macron in a good light, but because of that Neptune. Remember, he's very thin-skinned. He gets annoyed very easily. It doesn't take much to get him upset. And so I'm thinking, there could be issues here. And also with Macron, at the moment, he's got Uranus moving towards his IC. Okay, it's not, his IC is 29 degrees Taurus. So Uranus is moving towards that on Algol. So, okay, that's not great, but it is a few degrees off. Then look at Mercury. Mercury, at the time of the Paris Olympics, Mercury moves into Virgo. I think Mercury pretty much moves into Virgo on that day. And Mercury is on Macron's Saturn. There's Macron's Saturn at 0 degrees 27, and Mercury's Mercury's hitting Macron's Saturn. So, this makes me think that these Olympics, I'm not saying we're dealing with anything like Munich or anything, but I don't think that these Olympics are necessarily going to put Macron in a good light, for whatever reason. Because I do think that these Olympics really are about Macron, because we've got 29 Sagittarius rising at the opening ceremony, and of course 29 Sagittarius is the degree of Macron's Sun and Mercury. So it may be all about France, what is going on in France, and Macron's ego. Though we should not forget that Uranus is on Algol at the time of these Olympics, and it's on the Sun-Saturn midpoint. I'm not convinced that these Olympics are going to be entirely successful, and I suspect that they're going to be clouded by the fact that they're taking place during a summer of discontent. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say on the Olympics. Again, must emphasize, I'm not particularly interested in the Olympics, and I'm sort of only interested in them in terms of what they mean in a sort of a political sense. As a sporting event, I couldn't care less. So that's my view on the matter. I hope you find that of some interest. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you are not subscribed, and you enjoyed it, of course, then I would be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.